Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, we're just about to make start. So my name is Karen McNace from SEUPB. I'm a Programme Manager looking after this morning 2.4 and this afternoon's session 4.2, Rural Regeneration and Social Inclusion. So I think it's fair to say a lot of you were here this morning, so thank you for staying on. We have got some new faces, so welcome to the people who've just arrived this afternoon. Some of the presentations will be similar, but we are recording these sessions, so it's important that we do the full content, so just to flag that with you that that's the case. Again, for the people here this morning, you're aware there's no fire alarms or fire drills planned for today, so if the fire alarm does go off, we need to leave. And I think that's really all I need to introduce today. I'm going to hand over to Declan, who will make the formal introductions to our panel here today. And thank you, as I say, for attending. So thank you. Oh, sorry, one quick thing I forgot to mention, the partner notice boards. I think most of you on the way in have been speaking to our team, and I can see some of the little amber badges. We're very much encouraging partnerships, and hopefully you've had a good chance over lunch to meet with people and do a bit of networking as well. There is a notice board on the wall on the way out on one of the flip charts. If you're not already on our partner notice board and you're looking for partners, do get your organisation name on that board. We also have it on our website as well. So if you want to record it today, we can get that up on the website. So thank you. And over to Declan
then. Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Karen. So you're all very welcome to this afternoon's session. And as Karen said, I think a lot of you were here this morning, and there's a lot of new faces as well. So for those that were there this morning, just bear with us as I work through some of the same or very similar slides. But you're all very welcome. And as I said this morning, it's a really fantastic to be able to be in front of you today and really kicking off a lot of the rural-focused investment areas. So this afternoon's about investment area 4.2 around rural regeneration. So it's a really exciting area of the programme. There's a substantial and significant investment within this area of the programme for a range of different projects to come forward, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. But just to give you a sense of what it is that we're working through today, just in terms of the agenda. So shortly, I'll give you an overview of the programme and the structure for the programme, and also set out some of the context as well, how we've arrived at this point where we're ready to engage with you around project ideas and concept notes and things like that. I'd like to welcome my colleagues here today from the two government departments, the two what we call accountable departments. So Gareth Evans is here from DAERA, representing Northern Ireland policy interests in the programme, and Rosie Smith from the Department of Rural and Community Development. So Rosie and Gareth shortly will set out where the policy positions are and some of their interests in terms of what you should be looking at as you develop your idea and your concept note in the weeks ahead, and indeed into then the formal project application process. I'd also like to welcome a colleague, Lorraine McCourt, and Lorraine's here. And Lorraine's going to be a really key person in this process. So Lorraine will be really your main point of contact over the next number of weeks, and she'll set out some of the support that she'll be able to offer through this pre-application process, and also leading in then to the concept note and the development of that. So Lorraine will outline some of the focus of this investment area in a little bit more detail, and the support that she'll provide, and she'll set out as well what a concept note looks like. And I believe some of the concept notes are on your desk or should be on the tables if you get a chance to look at them as well, and they'll be published on the website. So just to give you a little bit of an overview then in terms of the programme itself, and a bit of background as well, just in terms of how we've come to the point of being able to engage with you today. So the context in terms of the development of the programme, and many of you will have been engaged in the consultations, the stakeholder engagement process that we had really commencing really back in 2018, continued into 2019, 2020 and beyond. So there's a huge amount of engagement, public events, and we also engaged quite a lot with the European Commission and also other stakeholders locally as well, and also obviously the Government of Ireland and the departments and the NI executive departments. The programme itself, and it's important to note this, is building on the previous PEACE and Interreg programmes. So you'll see a lot of familiarity if you're familiar with the current PEACE 4 programme and the current Interreg 5A programme. You'll see a lot of familiar areas of focus, so things around shared learning, shared education, right through to capital projects, a lot of the enterprise-focused areas, environmental areas. There's a lot of similar areas that we're continuing to focus on. There is a continued and obviously a renewed focus on peace and reconciliation, and that's right across every project. So really, as you sit down and look at your project under this particular investment area, it's important to think about the outcomes and the focus that the project will have around delivering peace and reconciliation, or making a contribution to that peace and reconciliation process. Also as well as that, ensuring, and we need to ensure that projects coming forward contribute to cross-border and economic and territorial development as well. So it's important just to note that, peace and reconciliation, but also the wider economic, social and environmental development of the programme area. So as I mentioned, there was a lot of engagement, stakeholder, public consultations. Hopefully many of you were engaged in. We had over 400 survey submissions that were submitted in the first stakeholder engagement process. And then we also followed it up then with a statutory consultation in 2021. So all of that really came together in terms of the programme that you see today. And hopefully all of you really have had a chance to look at the programme overview document that's on our programme website. But if you haven't, please do so, and you'll see the breadth of activity that is available. So the programme area is Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. That's where the focus is, and that's where the impact has to be felt. But the bottom bullet point there in terms of participation from partners outside the programme area is important to note. So there is that opportunity for partnerships to look at partners that may be able to add value who are based outside the programme area. So if you're a partner further south on the island of Ireland, or on an east-west basis, or even internationally, there's that opportunity there to bring those partners into your project, where they can add value and where they can demonstrate and where you can justify their involvement. So this is something that we're very much encouraging and believe it can add strength and value to each partnership and project. There's a huge, significant investment that's been made by the European Commission, the UK Government, and indeed the Government of Ireland and the NI Executive in terms of the programme. So we've got over €1 billion in terms of investment through each of these investment areas in each of the areas of the programme. So it's a huge programme. There's huge opportunity there that will address a lot of the challenges, or make a contribution to addressing a lot of the challenges that we face. So there's 6 thematic areas and 22 investment areas. And it's just to kind of reiterate that point about what each project should be making a contribution to, and it's about peace and prosperity. That's the overall objective of the programme, is about making a contribution and delivering peace and prosperity to the programme area. And that's the structure of the programme in terms of the different thematic areas, and also as well around the investment areas that the programme will operate on the basis of. So that's how the programme's structured. So each of those investment areas under each of the themes will have a separate call for applications. And one of those today obviously is 4.2, which is what we're focused on. But each of these areas has had a separate workshop, or will have a workshop in the very near future. And there's a lot of information on our website that you can look at. So if there's interest outside of this particular area today, please have a look at our website or attend one of the workshops that we'll be holding in the very near future. So you can see, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of familiar areas, some new areas as well. But right from theme 1, in terms of building peaceful and thriving communities, we've got the local authority peace action plans, which are being developed at the moment by each council, each local authority across Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. So So you can get involved in that process as well, engage with those councils as part of that co-design process. But also around shared space, re-imaging communities, large capital investments under Theme 1. You've got Theme 2, which is delivering socio-economic regeneration and transformation. You can see everything from innovation, the Innovation Challenge Fund. This morning we had a workshop on smart cities, towns and villages. There's also new areas in there as well around skills development as well, and we're looking at some strategic projects around that. And then Theme 3, a kind of continued and renewed focus on young people, children and young people. Theme 4, where this particular investment area sits, on healthy and inclusive communities. And then Theme 5, which is dealing with the climate emergency, the need to protect our biodiversity, our coastal environment, and how we can manage that in a more sustainable manner. And also around water infrastructure, water quality, geothermal energy, and transport as well. And then finally, Theme 6, which is building and embedding partnership and collaboration, which is around projects coming forward that are dealing in a strategic way around some of the challenges that are there due to the existence of the border. So how do we work more collaboratively, work better on a north-south basis to address some of those challenges that we experience? We also, what's also important to note as well, it's a bit of a flagship element to the PEACEPLUS programme, but there's 40 million euros that has been set aside for small scale or small grant initiatives. So they're under investment area 1.2 and investment area 6.2. So there's a huge funding allocation there for some of that community level grants and some of that building of capacity at that level through those initiatives. And we're working with PEACEPLUS in Ireland and also a Northern Ireland partner who will deliver those small scale or small grant initiatives on our behalf. So that's just an outline in terms of the structure in terms of the programme. But as I say, there's a lot more information that's available on our website, so please do look at it. I think it's also important just to note, a lot of you will be very familiar with this, but for those that are maybe new and looking at PEACEPLUS for the first time, just to give you a sense of what a project life cycle looks like. And again, we'll share these slides on our website afterwards so you can have a look at them then as well. But we're really at the top of that slide. That's where we are at the moment in terms of starting this engagement around 4.2, so the pre-development phase. So the programme itself, the overall programme has been approved, it's been adopted. But from a project's perspective, it's really about starting to elaborate on your project idea, engaging with Lorraine and ourselves in terms of the concept note development. And also, as Karen said earlier, today and beyond today, there's opportunities in terms of who do you need to work with in terms of partners. And we can help you with that. You can add your details to the board. We'll put that on our website. And also Lorraine, when she's engaging with you on the concept note process, can maybe give you a few pointers in terms of potential partners as well, where that's relevant. But once we work beyond that, then we'll publish a formal call for applications. So we're not quite at that stage yet, but over the course of the next number of months, a call will be finalised, and that will be then launched later this year. And that's then when you submit a full application to us. If you're beyond the concept note process and you think your project fits and you're wanting to put an application in, then that's the point that you do that. And then, if you're successful, then you would move into contracting and then through to project implementation. And the implementation of the project is about delivering on what you've said and what has been agreed to in your application. So coordinating those activities, working as a partnership on a collaborative basis, on a north-south basis, to deliver on a set of actions and activities. So just finally then, really just to reiterate where this sits within the programme. So there's 172 million euros that's available under the theme across 3 investment areas. And Lorraine will set out in a little bit more detail in terms of the financial allocation for 4.2. So that's just to give you a sense of some of the context and where this investment area sits within the structure of the programme as well. So at this point, I'm going to welcome and ask my colleagues from the two departments to join us. Rosie Smith from the Department of Rural and Community Development will outline some of the policy requirements and some of the things you need to think about from an Irish perspective. And then Gareth will follow up from a Northern Ireland perspective shortly. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rosie Smith, and I work in the Department of Rural and Community Development in Ireland. Our department was founded in July 2017 and is led by Minister Heather Humphreys, who is assisted by Minister Joe O'Brien. The department's mission is to promote rural and community development and to support vibrant, inclusive and sustainable communities throughout Ireland. Our vision is a sustainable society with individual and community well-being at its heart, supporting thriving rural communities and where all communities, urban and rural, have opportunities to grow together and develop economically, socially and culturally. A key objective of all the programmes under our department's remit is that they are targeted at those sectors and areas most in need, while also acknowledging the ongoing and future economic and social challenges we face as a result of a number of contributing factors. In addition to the PEACE programme, the department supports a variety of programmes that support rural regeneration and social inclusion, and so there is a wealth of experience within the department to provide the necessary guidance and support for this rural regeneration and social inclusion investment area. Our department is an accountable department for a number of thematic areas under the PEACE 4 programme, and for PEACEPLUS, we are an accountable department for a number of investment areas, including the rural regeneration and social inclusion. The objective of this investment area is to create a more cohesive society through an increased provision of community spaces, key services and supports in rural areas. Many of you here today have played a leading role in the delivery of PEACE programmes over the years and have a good success in the designing and development of programmes and in the delivery of infrastructure within your areas for the provision of services and supports, including those that promote outdoor activities and support enterprise and tourism. Navigating EU funding can be challenging, and Lorraine McCourt will be your key contact to provide you with the support for this investment area. There are also two other organisations that may be of useful reference to you, and these include Access Europe, run by the Wheel, and iCommunity, which is a joint initiative of the Wheel and NICFA. Under New Decade, New Approach, the Irish Government is committed to working with the Northern Ireland Executive through the North-South Ministerial Council to help deliver projects that will benefit people across the island of Ireland, north, south, east and west. We are committed to ensuring that the PEACEPLUS programme, which will build and continue on the work of both PEACE and Interreg, will continue to support reconciliation and harnessing the opportunities of peace for all. You will need to ensure that the new proposals and programmes are aligned with the relevant government and EU strategies and policies and local and county development plans, where there are proposals for development of infrastructure or facilities. This investment area places particular emphasis on supporting social, economic and environmental projects which contribute to sustainable regeneration, social inclusion and the creation of healthy and thriving communities in rural Ireland and rural areas. PEACEPLUS is additional funding and should not displace core public funding already provided. It should not duplicate other existing funds, and so project proposals need to outline how the project will directly contribute to peace and reconciliation. There has to be a clear peace focus. In my next few slides, I will outline a number of key documents from an Irish Government perspective, including, under the Programme for Government, Our Shared Future, we have committed to working with our EU partners and UK Government to secure the necessary funding for the EU PEACEPLUS programme, contributing to PEACEPLUS peace-building initiatives, and working with all communities and traditions on the island to build consensus around a shared future. Project Ireland 2040 is a combination of the National Development Plan, which sets out the investment priorities that will underpin the implementation of the National Planning Framework, and submissions should demonstrate relevance to Project Ireland 2040. It recognises that investment is required in rural areas for access to quality services and enhanced amenities such as trails and greenways. It outlines an objective to facilitate the development of the rural economy through supporting the agricultural sector, together with the bioeconomy and diversification into alternative on-farm and off-farm activities, while at the same time noting the importance of maintaining and protecting the natural landscape and built heritage, which are vital to rural tourism. It also includes objectives for integrated planning for green infrastructure to incorporate into the preparation of statutory land use plans and through integrated land use and spatial planning that supports public transport, walking and cycling as more favourable modes of transport of the private car. Our rural future focuses on optimising the opportunities for rural communities, assisting the regeneration and development of rural towns and villages, to contribute to local and national economic recovery, and to enable people to live and work in a vibrant environment. And the Town Centre First policy is central to this vision. Enhancing public services in rural areas to ensure that people living in rural areas have access to good quality public services that enable them to continue to live sustainably in rural communities and help them maintain a good quality of life. And putting the future development and regeneration of rural towns at the heart of decision making through the Town Centre First approach and investing significantly in the revitalising of rural towns and villages. The local development plans identify the planning and sustainable development of the county over the lifetime of the plan and provide overall strategy for the social, economic, cultural and physical development of the county, including improvements to local amenities. They must be compatible with the national and regional planning strategies, including the National Planning Framework and the regional, spatial and economic strategies. The local development plans are complementary to the local economic and community plans, which are currently under development in each local authority area in the border region of Ireland. The Roadmap for Social Inclusion up to 2025 sets out goals to measure progress across many aspects of social inclusion, including empowering communities to address social exclusion through investment in infrastructure at local level to support rural renewal and strengthening rural communities, and ensuring that all people have access to quality services, with the overall objective of achieving a better quality of life for all. It also outlines that community and voluntary groups leverage the energy, know-how and local knowledge of local volunteers to step up and give their time, both to provide critical local services and to advocate for improved services. The Action Plan for Rural Development highlights the potential of activity tourism to contribute to economic growth in rural areas. The development and promotion of this sector provides opportunities for growth in rural areas in particular by facilitating businesses to leverage the tourism assets in their areas in a sustainable way to support recreational activities. The plan also outlines actions to enhance local services, to foster a culture of volunteering and strengthen volunteering organisations, develop a strategy to underpin the development of greenways and cross-border tourism initiatives to support tourism potential. A key objective of our department is to facilitate the growth of grassroots community-led development and greater participation and engagement by all communities in local decision-making processes. And the department launched the Sustainable, Inclusive and Empowered Community Strategy to support the community and voluntary sector up to 2024, which supports partnership and collaborative effort at all levels and between all stakeholders, comprising of high-level objectives and associated actions to support communities, their representatives, organisations and the community and voluntary sector. And our department is delighted to see that the new PEACEPLUS Programme includes a strong community-led focus in each of the thematic and investment areas. This investment area will also support diversification in the agricultural sector and the development of social farms, which offer people who are socially, physically, mentally or intellectually disadvantaged the opportunity to spend time on a family farm in a healthy, safe, supportive and inclusive environment. Focus remains on encouraging participants to socialise, gain confidence and build relationships, to live ordinary lives interacting with their community, the environment and developing their true potential. The health of our population is a major focus for the government, and Get Ireland Active states physical inactivity is a demonstrated clear risk to health and well-being. With people no longer as physically active as they should be, there are many threats to our health and well-being, from being inactive, which is associated with numerous chronic diseases. Greenways provide an excellent opportunity for people of all ages to participate in healthy outdoor activity and can play a vital part in addressing physical inactivity. Greater participation in physical activity in communities provides social benefits and opportunities for social interaction that helps to build community networks, reduce isolation and exclusion, and build social cohesion. Embracing Ireland's outdoors, the National Outdoor Recreational Strategy up to 2027 was developed by Comhairle na Tuatha, the Countryside Council, in conjunction with our Department of Rural and Community Development. It will operate in an integrated manner alongside other government strategies and policies, including Project Ireland 2040, our Rural Future, and the future development of national and regional greenways. It will align our commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and provides a vision and an overarching framework for the growth and development of outdoor recreation. It is so important that we embrace the outdoors. Our insides are better when we are outside. The development of walking and cycling facilities will provide a valuable and accessible resource, not only for recreational users, but also for commuters that opt for a more favourable and healthier mode of transport. Greenways become a major attraction. They improve the tourism offering while also revitalising the towns and villages in their locality, providing opportunities for new social enterprises and job creation. The strategy for the future development of national and regional greenways recognises the benefits that can arise from the development of greenways in terms of economic contributors to rural communities through increased tourism. Greenways can transform rural areas around the country, provide a wonderful experience for visitors and locals, and contribute to the health of the nation. The benefits for the health and well-being of local communities through the use of greenways as recreational amenities are significant. Thank you.
Hi folks, even more familiar faces here now this afternoon, but thanks very much to Rosie for that. It'll come as no surprise that DAER's objectives under this investment area aren't so much dissimilar to our colleagues in DRCD. And again, I go back to our rural policy framework, which is our main vehicle taking rural policy forward at the minute. And for those that weren't here this morning, we have a couple of strap lines up there. We have the DAERA vision for rural, all about active landscape, valued by everybody, and sustainability at the heart of it. And then the framework's aim isn't that much different. Very similar, except we have sustainable and environmentally responsible way kind of thrown in there. When we were developing the framework, we developed 5 pillars. And as I said this morning, our 5 thematic pillars aren't the same as the PEACE ones, the 6 PEACE ones. They're very different. Not very different, but they're different. So under this investment area, there's really 2 main pillars that come into play. So pillar 1, innovation and entrepreneurship. And again, when the working group was looking at this, working group with stakeholders, they come up with this lovely strap line, all about making sure that innovation and entrepreneurship flourish within our rural societies. When they were looking at where maybe some of the need was under innovation, they come up here with 5 very distinct areas. Social interaction and innovation been in there, remote work and digitisation, kind of a throwback to this morning. Micro-enterprise at the heart of what we do. And I suppose the important one for this session is the second one down, all about raising awareness for social enterprise model in rural areas. When the group was investigating this, I actually sat in on this session, and one of the things that came out very strongly was that We do social enterprise in Northern Ireland, but in rural areas we don't do an awful lot of it. We could do far more of it, and particularly if you look at models elsewhere within the UK and Ireland. So on that basis, they come up with 3 main priority interventions here. So develop a culture of innovation up at the top there, to enable things, make sure we invest, to help develop our rural economy, and in this case particularly our social enterprise rural economy, and empower. So again, all about building capacity, raising awareness, and engaging entrepreneurship. As a department, we kind of did panic a little bit when we were looking at social enterprise, because we hadn't really touched too much on it. So we have actually done 2 calls. We did one with a grant from 25 to 50,000. I've recently closed one from 50,000 to 100,000. And I have to say, I have been very, very pleasantly surprised. I think we only got 1 cafe amongst all the applications, where we were told that that's all we would get is cafes and furniture renovation, or sorry, upcycling. We didn't get any of that at all. Very, very innovative. And in fact, a couple of the projects fitted well into social farming as well, and we're able to help develop that. Again, thinking about this morning, really anything we do going forward all depends on PFG. The more you can link to Programme for Government targets, the better chance you have of actually being able to take something forward, and always based on finding a need for the particular projects and schemes in the first place. So again, there are 2 main PFG targets there, all about developing a strong, competitive, regionally balanced economy, and also making sure that we have an innovative, creative society, and making sure people can develop their full potential going forward. So certainly under the social enterprise side of things, that's what we would like to see happening. I say we've had 2 calls. The last call, we haven't assessed the projects yet, so can't say too much about them. But we were very, very surprised at the level of innovation in some of them. It was absolutely fantastic. Very, very good. Moving on then to the health side of things and social inclusion. The thematic pillar it falls under is number 3. I'm not going to read that big long bit, but it is all about addressing social isolation and health. And as a department, we've done quite a lot of that under our tackling rural poverty and social isolation over the last number of years. And I know there's plenty of people in here familiar with that. So really, when the PEACEPLUS funding is coming along, we're looking to go above and beyond anything we've done under TRIPSI. Again, the key findings that came out of the stakeholder working groups when we were looking at this, none of them very surprising, to be quite honest. You know, that whenever we're developing facilities, we should make far better use of our rural estate and assets. All too often, people think about a project to address social isolation or social enterprise or whatever, and the first thing they think of is, oh, well, let's build a new building. Well, why? We have plenty of buildings out there and assets that can be reused, and I know that goes on in some areas. And I know Andrew's sitting there and he's involved in a project that's reusing an existing asset. Again, we need to invest more in our community space and infrastructure, because if we do that, we can then help to contribute to health and well-being. We can help address social isolation. If you provide facilities for people, I mean, this is a fantastic example where we're sitting here. If you provide facilities for people, they will come to it. And I didn't know the meeting room was on the top floor, so I went in the middle floor first. And there's 4 rooms there, totally full of people, totally engaged with each other, doing whatever they're doing, all very different, diverse activities going on, and that's great. And some of those things will help address social isolation. We need to think more about our young people. We have been, to a degree, certainly on the rural development side, We haven't done enough for young people, and we need to bring that further up the agenda a bit. And volunteerism, I think Rosie touched on it earlier as well. Volunteerism is the root of all of this, and without it, you can't have any success under this banner. And we have volunteers across the rural community at the minute, but we need to be able to grow that. And certainly in the department, we ran a Rural Halls programme, and part of that programme is mentoring people and developing their volunteering skills, and then putting a bit of money in behind that to community facilities. So it's all, again, very, very important. Our priority interventions, again, to champion it, how can we raise awareness? How can we get a better understanding of what isolation and loneliness is? Building capacity, again, back to actually putting in place the facilities and the infrastructure that people need to be able to get out and meet each other and get healthy, get out walking, get exercise. And as you see, whenever we were doing this work, this was the area that had the most key findings, the most priority interventions. And if you sit and think about it, it's probably the one that affects people the most and provides the best opportunities. So again, sustaining, let's think about sustaining our villages as social and economic centres. And again, that kicks back into social enterprise, developing social enterprises in villages. Community assets, again, looking at our community assets that we already have, how can we develop them? And the top one, reduce. Let's see how we can actually establish effective ways of reducing social isolation in our rural communities. So those are the 5 main drivers for the department. And it'll not be a surprise that you see this covers numerous programme for government targets. There's probably not too many missing from that list there. I think there's probably only 2 or 3 that we don't hit. And very comprehensive, and if you get it right, you do have significant impact on the ground. So again, that's why we'd be very keen to see good projects coming forward. Something that came out from the questions earlier on, I'm just kind of throwing this in at the end, the questions earlier on and a wee bit of discussion over lunch was, it seems there's a lot of people thinking about projects in isolation. And if you think about the projects in isolation, there's probably not the volume to take those forward. So I think in my personal opinion, but I think after talking to a few people, I think there needs to be a lot more networking takes place. I think there needs to be a lot more coming together. And if that can be facilitated by some of our colleagues, I'm sure they'll do it. But I think that is where you will get that capacity, the larger scale strategic project coming forward that maybe does address the needs then of 3 or 4 separate smaller groups underneath. But I think it's just an observation that at the minute, too many people are thinking about their own wee niche project and looking at some of the things that have been said and that and thinking, well, that's not actually going to fit. It's too small. Well, then get together with other people with a similar ideas and use the facilitation from SEUPB to try and draw those out and draw those projects forward and turn them into bigger strategic projects. And then I think you'll have a far better opportunity when it comes to the time of calls. So I have nothing else to say, so thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Gareth, and indeed Rosie. And I think the last point that Gareth was making really was one of the reasons why we're doing this, and I think, some of the projects that will come forward or need to come forward are going to have to be more strategic in nature, but it's how you build that partnership underneath that and that engagement. And of course, we can try and facilitate some of that, and Lorraine will engage in that as well. So look, I'm going to pass over now to Lorraine McCourt, and Lorraine's going to take you through the detail of 4.2 as it currently stands, and she'll also set out the pre-application support that she'll offer as well. So Lorraine, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to Declan and Karen for inviting me to come along here today to be part of this. For those of you that don't know me, I have worked both on the funding side in relation to European funding, but for the last sort of 6 to 7 years now, have been working as a consultant helping people to prepare project proposals and secure funds to allow them to move those project proposals through to implementation. So Karen and Declan thought that that perspective may be helpful for you this afternoon in providing some pre-application advice for you under this strand. So it's really my job to set out some of the mechanics for you in terms of what is available and then what kind of support you can get in relation to some advice before you put in a formal application. So let me just make sure this is moving forward. Brilliant. Okay. So first of all, just to say in terms of the rural regeneration and social inclusion theme, as with any of these investment areas, there are specific objectives that each of the investment areas are trying to achieve. So this particular strand is trying to create a more cohesive society through increased provision of shared spaces and services in rural areas. Okay? And that strategic investment was really to allow rural communities to thrive and reach their full economic, social and environmental potential. Now, as Declan has already alluded to, there are other areas of the PEACEPLUS Programme that hit a number of these different areas as well in terms of environmental projects, in terms of space-based projects under 1.4, and also in terms of economic regeneration projects. So one of the first things that you need to look at quite carefully is to make sure that this is the most appropriate funding strand for your particular concept, and hopefully I'll be able to help you work through that and guide you as you move forward. But really you need to think about the whole concept then in terms of rural regeneration as you move forward with your project. So in relation to the investment area, the investment will support social, economic and environmental projects which contribute to the creation of healthy communities in rural areas. Our rural communities are struggling in a variety of different ways, and I think the impact of the pandemic has been very keenly felt in some of the rural communities. So this investment is really trying to target some of those key needs and help communities to move forward. So that will be achieved through health and wellbeing focused solutions. It aims to tackle social isolation, promote social inclusion, and thereby create healthy and inclusive rural communities. Please bear in mind that this is the PEACEPLUS Programme, so it really is about how you bring communities together. You may well have an idea for a project which is about community regeneration and about delivering good services for a community, but you need to always bear in mind that the primary focus here, it is the PEACE Programme, it has to be about cross-community interaction and engagement. So when you're thinking about your regeneration concepts, do keep that at the forefront of your mind all the time. How will we bring that peace and reconciliation dividend forward as part of that regeneration activity? So what the investment area is seeking to deliver is to support rural communities and to do that in a variety of different ways. So one of the first areas there is through improved access to key services, through social enterprise development, and I know we're looking at economics here and economic regeneration. Just to say that this particular strand of funding is more geared towards social enterprise than it is through to pure enterprise-driven projects. Theme 2.1 is there in terms of SME development and transition, so that's very much on the economic side. This is more geared towards the social enterprise aspect of things, but there may be a combination of factors that can come together. There's also development of green infrastructure, and that's looking at both the health and wellbeing benefits that was alluded to there by Gareth and Rosie, but also in relation to how that can be harnessed in terms of that rural regeneration capacity as well, in relation to rural tourism and just the regeneration activity that can bring forward as well. So what's available? Well, there's a significant amount of money that is available. You've got €50 million available under this particular theme, and that is made up of both European funding and also government match. The absolutely brilliant news for all of you here this afternoon is that there's also an opportunity to seek additional financial support through the government departments, through your application process, so just the one application through to SEUPB at later stage, but you have the opportunity to ask for up to 100% of the eligible project cost. Now that doesn't mean that you have to. You can choose to opt to bid in for less, And there may be some benefits and reasons why that would be a good thing to do, but you have the opportunity here to identify what your full project cost is and to seek reimbursement for up to 100% of that where those costs are eligible within the various different strands of the programme. So what kinds of actions can this include? And I suppose the first thing to say to you is that these are indicative. We're going to give you some outline ideas. These may not be the only ideas that are available. If you have a better idea or an alternative idea that you want to factor into the overall mix, that's also fine. There is some flexibility here, but in terms of indicative actions and the types of things that would be considered eligible under this strand, and that both SEUPB and the departments will be looking at when they come forward, we're going to give you a number of examples now just over the next couple of slides. Just bearing in mind that these are all geared towards rural community development, sustainable regeneration and social inclusion. So the first one here on your list there is community development resources. So collaborative, and that is absolutely the key word in all of this, collaborative approaches in relation to key strategic projects and delivery of core community services. Now, we're saying here cross-community and cross-border. Please be aware, if you take nothing else away from this conversation this afternoon, cross-border is a requirement under this strand. Cross-community must be in there as well, but it must be a cross-border project. And we'll talk a wee bit more about what that might look like or what that involves. But it has got to be cross-border. So if you have, and as Gareth was saying, if you have got an idea for a rural regeneration project, but it is single jurisdiction in either the border counties or in Northern Ireland at this point, and it's purely for the benefit of that community, you will need to think broader because it must bring a cross-border dimension for it to be eligible under this particular strand. Another element that can be looked at here are family support hubs, so where you're delivering centralised facilities and services to provide key family support. That can range from early years up to older people, and in settings which facilitate increased levels of cross-community contact. So again, cross-community, you'll see this following through all the strands. Social enterprise activities are also eligible within this particular strand, and in particular the delivery of rural-specific social enterprise support programmes. So what are those key things that would mobilise, facilitate the rural community in maintaining that vibrancy and the sustainability into the future? And I know certainly even with other work that I've been doing recently, there's a range of core needs that are being expressed in rural communities for the types of services that will allow young families to stay in the area and also provide support for an ageing population in some areas as well, and keep people healthy and well in their own homes. So thinking about that in the broader context also. Then also possible under this particular strand are elements related to green infrastructure. So where you are developing green infrastructure to promote both active lifestyles and also those that could support rural enterprise and tourism development within rural areas. So again, cross-border. Now that does not mean that these things physically have to straddle the border. It can be projects that are located and have impact on a cross-border basis but are not physically on the border area itself. But certainly things that are promoting active lifestyles and tourism development. And then we also then have mentioned, and I think Rosie alluded to it earlier, in relation to social farming. And again, a very core part in terms of our rural communities and the agricultural sector. There's an opportunity here in relation to supporting diversification and also the development of social farming. And we've seen previous really excellent examples of this type of project activity in previous funding programmes, where it's not only brought the benefit to those individuals that are participating in the project, that are getting the benefit of coming onto the farm, but also for those farming families in terms of that wider connectivity through the rural community as well. So those are some actions, but as I said, they're not an exhaustive list, and you may well have other opportunities that you can identify, and I'm more than happy to talk about the relative merits of those ideas and whether or not they potentially do fit or not within the strand. So who can apply? Well, I think first of all, in terms of applicants, if you're going to be, and can I maybe ask just for a very brief show of hands, if any of you are brave enough to do it, how many people are here representing an organisation who are contemplating the thought of being a lead partner and putting in a bid under the strand? So a number of you are thinking of that, and others maybe are here looking in terms of the possibility of being a partner on a project. So for those of you that are looking to bid in as the lead, and also with that wider partnership, one of your first criteria here is that you want to make sure that you have the capacity to deliver on the scale of project that you're proposing. So that's in relation to the outputs and results and actions that you're intending to deliver and the amount of money that you're asking to be offered in support of that. So those that have capacity to deliver and those that have the ability to deliver those project activities within the eligible area. So that's within Northern Ireland and the border counties, or if you're linking slightly further afield, and as Declan alluded to, you have the opportunity to do that. Are you able to deliver in those locations that you're saying you're going to deliver in, and that you're going to be able to engage with the people that you're intending to deliver services and projects for? Can you deliver on a cross-border basis and deliver those peace and prosperity benefits? So if you're proposing a cross-border project, you need to be able to demonstrate that you've got those cross-border linkages to allow you to deliver out on those aims and objectives. And also whether you've got the ability to implement the project over the programme's lifespan. So you're talking in the region of 3 to 4 year programme activity here, at the point at which you would potentially get a successful outcome to your funding bid. So you want to be looking at something that's going to enable you, by way of partnership or your organisational capacity, to deliver over that time frame and see this through. But you have a really good opportunity here to establish a working partnership that builds in all of that capacity, that brings in a degree of expertise and allows you to move forward in that way on a cross-border basis. So in relation to managing and measuring change, obviously the programme is asking you to come forward with project proposals that are going to deliver a substantive change as a result of that investment. And what you're aiming to do here is that you're aiming to create significant and sustained contact between diverse rural communities. And that is on a cross-community basis. And in that way, you will make a substantial contribution towards a more peaceful and prosperous rural area. So those two words have got to feature, and you must maintain those at the forefront of your thoughts as you move forward. So what are you doing that is cross-community? What are you doing in terms of economic regeneration and prosperity? And how are you bringing in that cross-community or cross-border impact as well? Now, as with any of the funding strands, there are a range of key indicators that have been set out and agreed with the European Commission. So these will now form the cornerstone of the assessment process as bids are being reviewed and evaluated for potential impact and success. So it's not to say that any of your proposals have to target and deal with every element of this in terms of dealing with the entirety, but when you're bidding in for a pot of funding, bear in mind that you need to be proportionate. So if you're saying that you're going to deliver a range of outputs, the amount of money that you're asking for needs to be proportionate to the overall context. So against the €50 million budget, what the overall theme is aiming to deliver here is 20 jointly developed solutions. Now, that doesn't necessarily need to be 20 projects. You can have, as we mentioned this morning, you can have a project that has more than one element to it, so that it doesn't necessarily need to translate into 20 specific projects, but it's 20 jointly developed solutions. Now, the word joint in relation to cross-border, just to kind of give you a sense as to what that means, there's 4 component parts to that. So if you're talking about jointly developed in relation to cross-border activity, you can have joint project development, so in terms of how you've actually built the proposal and worked it out together. You can have joint delivery, so you're bringing a cross-border partnership together to deliver that project and implement it on the ground. You can have joint financing, so you've actually a joint budget that you're working through together on a cross-border basis. And the other option is joint staffing. So there's 4 component parts there to joint in terms of cross-border activity, and I would strongly suggest that you actively consider all 4 of those and think about how you're going to weave those into your project proposal. So 20 jointly developed solutions, and through the delivery of those jointly developed solutions, there will be 65 enterprises supported as a minimum. Okay? And that can be non-financial supports, so it can be the provision of information, it can be mentoring, it can be access to new services and so on, and there can also be some degree of financial support in terms of those organisations that are getting involved in the delivery of the project as well. Ultimately, in relation to the result indicator here, those are the outputs. Those outputs must deliver a result, and the end result of this is that by the end of the investment of that 50 million euro, there will be 25,000 participants that will have accessed new rural facilities, enterprises and community services. So you need to think about how much of the output am I delivering and how many participants will benefit from our project by the time we get through and out the other side. And make sure that what you're asking for by way of your project budget is proportionate to what you're going to deliver. All right? So just to tell you then a little bit about what is available to you now. That's a lot of information to take on board in a few minutes. But it's a fantastic opportunity that is being made available now by SEUPB to get some pre-application advice. These applications, it does take time and energy to work them up. They are substantive. And if you want to get some early information in relation to whether your project is actually something that is a potential fit for this strand before you go to the entirety of that work, this is a great opportunity for you to do that. So the pre-application advice function is really to allow you to navigate through and first of all to determine whether or not this particular strand in theme 4.2 is it the right investment area for you. Are you focusing your energies in the right place, or is there a different area of PEACEPLUS that would be more appropriate, or perhaps a different funding strand altogether, external to PEACEPLUS? You can use it as an opportunity to give me, as an independent, some information and then potentially share some of that information with SEUPB as well in terms of asking key questions, but giving an indication as to what your idea is and get some initial feedback as to whether or not that concept fits within the funding parameters. You'll also be able to get some initial advice in terms of whether or not there's areas where your project application could be strengthened, and also an opportunity to figure out through kind of a liaison point in myself as to whether or not there are any other organisations that are potentially looking at the same type of activity, and are there opportunities there for you to work collaboratively together on an overall proposal as opposed to being in competition to each other, basically proposing the same types of activities. So it is a very good opportunity for you to get that initial steer without having to go to the full extent of working up a full and complete bid. Now, what we're going to make available, and I think it might already be on the website, Karen, is it? Yeah, it is. So the concept note template is already there. What it is, it's basically a project outline document. So it gives you the opportunity to give some initial ideas. It's taking out the core rudiments of what you will see on a full project application at a later stage, but it's obviously not the entirety of it. But it starts to get you down into the way of thinking about what the key elements will be on that full application, and give you an opportunity to put some of that forward and see whether or not it's coming across strongly. It's not a formal application, so this is not going to count later on. You will need to put in a full bid if you wish to proceed. It's not scored, so anything that you do now by way of initial ideas, it's not held against you later on. You can put in a completely different concept if you wish. Nobody's tracking, so it is an opportunity for you to develop your proposal and work that up as you move forward. So just what I wanted to do is just talk you through then some of the elements of what will be within that concept note, and then what aspects we're asking you to consider as you're working forward in your project proposal. So really the project outline or the concept note, it's 3 pages, there's 6 questions on it, and they are asking you to give me about 300 to 500 words, but if you don't fill it all in, that's okay. Obviously the more information you can offer, the more advice I can give you back. But it's really to give you that opportunity in a short form way to start providing some information on what your concept is. I will then be able to come back to you with that advice. You can also contact me, send me an email or whatever, and ask me any particular queries that you have in advance of submitting it. But what we're asking you to do is to get that filled in and submit it through directly to me by the 26th of April. But if you've got it ready before that, do feel free to send it on, and I will start working on it as soon as I receive your various different concepts. And you'll see the email addresses there, but it is also on the SEUPB website as well. So just in relation to the questions that we're asking you to address within that concept note. So the first one is about your project. So first and foremost, what is your project concept and how have you identified the need for it? There is no point in putting forward a proposal unless you can demonstrate that there's a need and demand for the type of activity and project that you are proposing to deliver. If you're going to engage participants, participants will engage where there's something there that they want. So how have you established that need and demand? And there may be some opportunities for conversation there around how you would go about doing that, both by way of information sources that are available and maybe some other information that you need to work up yourselves. Then also asking you to think about how your project aligns with PEACEPLUS and in particular theme 4.2. So in particular, how is your proposed project going to deliver significant and sustained contact between diverse rural communities? And in this case, the rural, we have an outline definition as to what constitutes rural, but we're looking at small towns and villages in terms of scale. How will it create a more cohesive society? And how will it enable rural communities to thrive and reach their full economic, social and environmental potential, and doing that on a cross-border basis? Okay, so just how does your project stack up against those key areas? Then what we're asking you to think about as well is just to what extent does that concept or idea and the need and demand that informs it, how does that align with government policy and strategy? And Gareth and Rosie have already talked you through what those key priorities are, so you will need to consider how does your particular proposal align to those key elements. What's new and innovative about it? You know, has it been tried and tested and done before, or is this something that's an extension of what's there? How does it fill a gap or a need in the marketplace for that type of activity? You then are moving on in the next question really to think about what your results and outputs are. So as I've alluded to, there are a range of output indicators and results there. So really just taking each one of those one at a time, what are you proposing in relation to your project and how will it deliver against each one of those? Ultimately, SEUPB will need to demonstrate that the investment achieves the entirety of what's there, so you need to make sure that as you're defining your project proposal that you're aligning directly to those results and outputs, so that you can be very clear and show that you're making a contribution to the overall funding investment need. Then in relation to cross-community and cross-border, thinking about the cross-community side first, how will your project make a contribution to peace and prosperity? So how will it bring communities together on a cross-community basis, and how will it lead to increased and sustained cross-community interaction? Now, I am working with some other organisations at the minute on PEACEPLUS action plans and doing a lot of community consultation. And one of the key things that we keep stressing to the various stakeholders on those particular projects is it's not enough to have a facility that simply welcomes, says we're open and available for everyone, and you get one group comes in at between 5 and 6 and they leave, and the next group comes in at 6:15 and never the twain will meet. How are you going to actually engage people together on the delivery of services, facilities, and actually get them involved on a whole community basis in a way that is generating rural prosperity and that regeneration capacity and making sure that that community is cohesive? Then we're also asking you in relation to what geographical area your project will cover and how then are you demonstrating cross-border impact. So are you using cross-border partnership, and are you delivering and developing cross-border facilities, services, social enterprise and activities? So what is cross-border about it, and how can you demonstrate where that impact will be? In relation to your partnership, one of the questions I get asked a lot in relation to developing projects is how many partners should I have? There is no magic number. What you really need to think about here in relation to your project partnership and how you're going to go forward and implement this is, who do I need to have around my partnership table that will allow me to deliver effectively what it is that I'm aiming to deliver? And make sure that you have the right organisations with the right capacity, the right kind of skill set, and the right links into the community that will allow you to deliver those impacts. So, for example, think about the staff that are involved. Who's going to be involved in this project? What will they be doing? And how are you going to divvy up those roles and responsibilities across your partnership? Have you got suitable experience and qualifications and capacity there, or will you need to bring more on board to help you to do that? How will you practically implement this project? So are you going to work this out in relation to particular types of activity and share that across a partnership, or how will you physically manage that process forward? And then just think about how you weave that into the structure of your partnership. Is this tried and tested, or are you bringing together a new partnership that will help you to deliver this? And if so, what will be the best way to structure that will enable you to do it quickly and effectively? The other thing that is worth bearing in mind at this time is we always like to think that everything will go absolutely swimmingly and nothing will ever go wrong. That's not the reality in project development and delivery. So the other key thing to do at this stage is think about, well, what are the potential challenges that we're going to face here as a partnership? What are the risks that we might face? What are those key things that we need to be planning for now, that if we had a bit of a thought around it, it would actually make our lives easier when we get into the realms of implementation. So just thinking about some of those key challenges at this stage might also be useful. And again, that's a conversation that I can have with you in relation to just the practical requirements of delivering EU programmes and projects. In respect to value for money, whenever these bids come through to SEUPB, these guys have a unique challenge in that they must demonstrate and satisfy the steering committee that the amount of money being allocated to a project is the minimum amount of money necessary to allow that project to proceed. So they can't give out more than is necessary. It has to be appropriately costed. So how have you identified your potential budget for this project? Have you done any kind of market testing? Have you sat down and really thought about the range of staff that you need, equipment, facilities and so on? How have you come up with those numbers? And really just look at that. It's not all about staff. It's not all about equipment. There's other resources sometimes that you need, or connections and networks. Think about that in the widest context and make sure that when you're putting in numbers that you're satisfied as well, that when you ask for an amount of money, that if you get that amount of money, it will be enough to allow you to move forward and to deliver. You have a unique opportunity here for up to 100% funding, so make sure you get that number as close to being accurate as you can, and that it's going to help you to deliver out on the full range of activities that you're going to want to deliver. You may need to undertake competitive tendering through the course of delivery of the project. Is there any way that you can satisfy yourselves, even in advance of that, that you've got a ballpark figure that you know is broadly in the right space? And are you making sure that all of those costs directly align to the activities, the results and the outputs that you are aiming to deliver? If you're asking for something and whenever the bid sits on an assessor's table and they're looking at it going, okay, they've asked for minibus, but I don't see that they're actually intending to bring anybody anywhere. Think about what is the range of equipment we're asking for, and if it's not directly aligned or necessary to allow you to deliver this specific project, don't ask for it, because you're only asking and creating difficulty in the assessment process. Make sure every cost element that you're presenting is directly aligned to the activities and the outputs that you're proposing. Now, for those of you that put your hands up there a short time ago and said that you were potentially looking at taking on the role of lead partner, the lead partner, it is a very specific role. You do have responsibilities that come with that. And just to very briefly touch on what those are, effectively you're taking on board as lead partner the role and responsibility for ensuring the delivery of the entirety of the project. So you are carrying the responsibility for the entirety of the project budget. You also need to make sure then that you are taking on that coordination role. So as lead partner, you're signing up to saying, we will make sure that if you give us this money, we will coordinate all those other partners and we will deliver for you and we will come out the other side with everything achieved. So that involves both coordinating the partnership, coordinating the structuring and timing of the activities, managing the finances, reporting back to SEUPB on the progress that you're making across time and the delivery of that. You're also going to be responsible for the communication, both externally to your participants and also back to your funders. If there's training needed in terms of training up staff for the wider partnership, you will be coordinating that and also making sure that appropriate policies and procedures are in place for the delivery of that project as you move forward. So it is not for the faint of heart, but it is achievable, it is workable. When you're thinking about the project and if you're taking on a lead partner role, make sure that you, and particularly in relation to your costings, make sure that you're thinking about what that actually means for yourselves as organisations as well, and you need to make sure you have adequate provision by way of cost in to fulfil that function and that lead partner role, because it is not, you know, it can be substantive, particularly for a large-scale project. So just in terms of things to bear in mind as you move forward, please, you know, this is your opportunity. You have a few months now before there's going to be an invitation for bids to be submitted through to SEUPB. So this is a time window that you have available to really sit down and properly think this through. So take that time to really sit down, think about your partnership and be clear about who is going to do what as you move forward. If you're putting in a proposal, how are you going to structure that? How are you going to work out the roles and responsibilities? Be clear about what scale of a project you're taking on and what that means for yourselves as organisations, and in particular for those organisations that are going to be taking on significant burden in terms of cash flow. Think about what that is going to require by way of regular cash flow. Generally speaking, this type of funding is retrospective. You need to expend money before you get to reclaim it, so you need to think about the practical requirements of that. But ultimately, you need to make sure that you've got a clarity of purpose, and you must always consider that you're focusing here on peace and prosperity. Maintain your clarity of purpose in that regard as you move forward, and that will stand you in good stead under this particular strand of the PEACEPLUS programme. Now, in relation to timescales, as has already been alluded to, the concept note is available in terms of that template document is available already online. We mentioned 26th of April is really your cut-off point to try and get those ideas forward to me so that I can start to work with you. I will aim then, once I receive your documentation, I will aim to review that and come back to you with comments and to discuss that with you in terms of feedback within 15 days. If I can do it quicker, I will, but that's what I aim to do. And then we will work out in terms of whether or not your concept has got a degree of potential merit and what additional support may be useful for you in the progression of that idea as you move forward. What I'll aim to do within that feedback, first of all, just say you don't have to use it. This is optional. You do not have to come near me at all. You can go off and do your own thing, and that's absolutely fine. If you do decide to come forward and to avail of that feedback, what I'm going to aim to do for you is to identify if there are areas of your proposal that are just not aligned clearly to strand 4.2. So if I think that you've gone off on a tangent and you're not closely enough aligned, I'll try and give you that feedback to say, look, you know, there's elements here that I think may be challenging. And if you've got a lack of clarity, sometimes we start out and as we build a proposal, things kind of move around, particularly when you've got multiple partners involved. So if it's not coming across clearly and strongly enough in terms of core concept, I'll try and feed that back to you as well. Or if there's any elements here that might present a challenge in terms of positive assessment and eligibility criteria in respect to the various different costs that you're proposing. I will also try and give you some recommendation on areas where I think your project proposal could be strengthened, and any other operational issues that I think that as you're moving forward, there might be queries here in terms of the operational implementation of it that might present a challenge or things that you need to think about. I'll put that forward to you as well. What I want to stress, however, is any comments that are offered are independent. They're based on my best guess as to what will happen whenever this goes into a full assessment process. However, I will not be assessing this bid. So there's no guarantee with any of this. I'm providing you with the best information that I can based on the project and the programme outline. And ultimately, any of those comments that are offered, you can either choose to accept them or completely reject them. That gift is entirely in your hands. You do not have to take on board anything that you do not wish. The project proposal that you're putting forward ultimately to SEUPB is your project, and you need to have complete ownership of that as you move forward. So as it moves forward, Declan will and Karen will be making available other documentation for you. There will be other sources of information. I would strongly suggest that you go online and you access as much information as is already there as you possibly can. And additional documentation will be coming up over the next number of months. Do, as that comes available, sit down, read through it, read it 2 or 3 times and make sure that you understand the elements of it, and just keep reflecting on that and building that into your proposal as you move forward in its development. And that's it. So I will hand you back now to Declan if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer any myself.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Lorraine. That was a really comprehensive overview of the process. So really from this point forward, then it's over to you in terms of, you know, looking at the concept notes, if you believe that there is a potential fit in terms of the ideas that you have, and obviously then avail of the support that Lorraine can offer. Just to reiterate a couple of points, really, just from what Lorraine said, and Lorraine's went over most of this, but just to emphasise it, you know, that this is an informal part of the process, you know, and really important to make that point and to stress that point. You know, it's not mandatory, it's not scored, as Lorraine said, and the advice that Lorraine's offering is obviously independent as well from ourselves. But, you know, it's something that we're really encouraging people to engage with. You know, we haven't had this before under the current PEACE or Interreg programmes, so it's something that's new and something I think that's needed, and I think it's something that's really positive and can be beneficial in terms of the process, but it is informal. The other thing is, you know, there's a lot of information there, and you know, you have to go away and reflect on that, and you know, don't rush into, you know, submitting the concept note tomorrow. You know, there's a bit of reflection and a bit of thinking to do. Do look at some of the information in terms of fit and the programme overview and some of the slides that Lorraine's presented as well. But it's just you know, take time to reflect over the next couple of weeks before you submit the concept note. So, and then the other thing is as well, you know, we've said throughout today and this afternoon is, you know, the opportunity to network and to build partnerships as well. You know, we're looking at strategic bids here, you know, of scale, but the partnership below that is really critical in terms of delivery. You know, whether that's pilot actions, whether it's capital builds, or whatever else it might be, it's really important to get that partnership right and to reflect on what Lorraine has outlined. So, you know, if you haven't already done so, you know, leave your details with our colleagues, put them on the board outside, and, you know, if necessary, we can put information up on our website and people can get back to you. And also use today, even after today's event, to talk as well. What I would say as well is, look, as part of this process, we'll continue to develop frequently asked questions. So there's already some up on our website that you'll see, you know, beyond today. If you do have questions and they're coming through Lorraine over the next number of weeks, Lorraine will feed those back to us and we'll come back with a response just to help the process. So look, I'd just like to thank everybody for taking the time and travelling here today. I hope you found it beneficial, and I look forward to hearing more about your project ideas in the months ahead. Thank you very much.